things I just listed over the weekend and Luke Holman's worst start. Like, isn't that the way it goes? It's the way it's gone for this team. Like, if you think you've put something together, it just kind of flips on itself. And so I guess you could say, fortunately, LSU gets 2 of 3 because you went to a rubber game. But if I would have told you going into the weekend, I would say, okay, Jump's going to throw a complete game and dominate. Larson's going to be great. Herring is going to slam the door with his dominant stuff. Like, all these things I could have rattled off, and that's really good. And then I'm like, oh yeah, and Luke Holman got tagged about pretty good. And that's a bummer. And the bullpen did not back him up very well. But you got 2, and that was the minimum that you could accomplish. I want to start with Gage Jump, and I'll go to Jay Johnson first on his thoughts on the outing, but I'll give mine after the head coach does.
I've never really felt like he was that far away. Like when you look at the stat line and you see 14 strikeouts and those types of things, to me it is less of a surprise. And I think he's poised to continue to pitch well. I think he's mixed a little more, and throwing all 4 pitches with a little more frequency. I just think he just suffocated the strike zone. And so there's just a lot of pressure and felt like everybody was to 2 strikes quickly. And just a good performance by Gage.
Jay beat me to the notebook there with suffocating the strike zone, but that's exactly what Gage Jump did on Friday night. He had 2 strikes on 17 of the 24 hitters that he faced in the game. And of those 17 that he got to 2 strikes on, he struck out 14 of them. Only one Missouri Tiger batter reached with 2 strikes. And the best sign, in my opinion, for a pitcher when they're going is that you're getting swings and misses on the fastball. Because if hitters can't hit your fastball and they're not reacting properly to the fastball, then they have no chance. No chance. Sometimes guys hunt fastballs that may make them look foolish on changeups, may make them look foolish on breaking balls. But if they can't get to the fastball, then forget it. And they could not get to Gage Jump's fastball. There's no denying Jump's talent. I mean, you look at a fastball that sits 92 to 95, and the breaking ball is good, and he's mixed some changeups here and there. Jay mentioned 4 pitches there. I feel like you see more often, too, than the others. But you're talking about a guy whose ERA in SEC games was 7 entering the Missouri series. So how much of this is Missouri being inept offensively, and how much of this is Gage Jump turning a corner? Well, I can't tell you that for sure. I would tend to believe it's more Missouri's bats because I've got 5 samples over here and 1 sample over here. And my 5 samples previous to the Missouri series say, kind of average. And my 1 says, oh, really, really good. And then I take Missouri and I look at them hitting 202 as a team in SEC play entering the game. And I go, well, it's probably more Missouri. But Auburn doesn't hit a lick either. And they're coming in here next week. And so I'm not going to rule out Gage Jump getting more confident, executing his pitchers better, and being a better pitcher of the second half of SEC play. I'm not completely poo-pooing the outing. I'm just calling it like I see it. Like the sample size suggests that this has more to do with Missouri being poor offensively. Now, on the flip side of that, I don't have a large sample size with Ashton Larson, but he has become something you can depend on in SEC play. Tommy White has hit in league play. Hayden Travinski has hit in league play. Jared Jones has hit in league play. They're all not hitting 400, but they've all been between 268 and 315, and they've got 5-8 home runs. Like they've done their job. Is it all conference player of the year? No, it's not. And Michael Braswell has gotten on base. He's in the top 10 in the SEC in on-base percentage in league play. He's not hitting home runs. He doesn't hit a lot of doubles, but he is getting on base. He's drawing walks and he's hitting singles at a really strong clip. But after those guys, it's been mediocre to very, very poor offensively. So, like, who's going to step up? And now it's not just Ashton Larson kind of swung the bat pretty well in Fayetteville. Now it's like Ashton Larson in 10 SEC starts is hitting 395 with a 500 on-base percentage. Clubbed 3 home runs in those 10 SEC starts. So he's becoming a guy that you can really count on, and I think that's huge for this team. So if you're looking at some things that have to happen for LSU to get this thing turned around, well, Gage Jump's got to look more like that. In fact, that may be the biggest thing, because I'm not that concerned with Luke Holman's stat line from Saturday. I wish it was better. I wish they had won the game. Do I think that's an indication of what you're going to see against Auburn? I don't. I'm going to count on him as a consistent with Tommy White, with Hayden Travinski. Like, those guys are going to be okay. I need steps up in performance, whichever way you want to phrase that. Gage jump, need it. Ashton Larson, need it. Now, here's another question that I've gotten a lot over the last 48 hours. It's, should Griffin Herring be a starter? Because you've seen Herring, and he's been awesome all year long. He's gone 50-plus pitches in his last 5 SEC outings, and 2 of those went over 70-plus pitches. So he's stretched out, and when he stretches out, he doesn't lose his effectiveness. People see him a second time, and he's gotten through that just fine. So should he start? No, he should not start. You're looking at a team that can count on so very little. There just isn't a lot that they can count on every single weekend. Griffin Herring coming in the 7th inning or 8th inning to close out a win is something they can count on. It accounts for almost every win they have in league play. Just save Gage jumps, 1 shutout. That's something they have that they can depend on in the toolbox. Why would I take that away? Why would I determine if Luke Holman comes out of the game on Friday and LSU leads by 3 and it's, there's 1 out in the 7th, why would I save Griffin Herring for Sunday? If LSU at this point through 18 games was 14-4, then I might consider that to see if I had another starting pitcher. You have to get every precious win that is afforded you. And taking Griffin Herring out of that bullpen role to make him show up on Sunday and start a game you don't know what your offense is going to perform like in, I can't do that to this club. He has to be in the back end of the bullpen and ready to go whenever the lead happens. This is what Arkansas did with their great team 3 years ago in Kevin Kopps. Now, I'm not saying Griffin Herring's every bit Kevin Kopps. He was as good as there was in college baseball that year. But that's the role he's playing. When LSU gets a lead, he's coming in. So it was not a disappointing weekend. I don't want to say that. You won the series on the road. Do I wish, knowing the things I know now, that Holman had his normal day? Yes. I mean, he just didn't have his stuff. His first pitch of the weekend, he hits the guy in the knee. Then that jet stream into right center field, which, by the way, I have never seen a ballpark play so strongly to one part of the field. Like, I don't even remember seeing a home run to left field over the weekend. I didn't go back and look, but everybody that got the ball up into the air to right center field, both sides, you're like, well, that's gone. Just anybody that hit it over there, gone. And he gave up one of those that was a double off the wall. And then Braswell makes a careless error on the ball that ricochets off of him. And then you give up 2 runs. And then, he feels like he's cruising because in the 3rd and 4th, he gets them up and down in order. And then he gets the first 2 out in the 5th. And then walk, double, walk. And then his day's over. And he just didn't have his stuff. And that happens sometimes. But they got 2 wins. They're not in an advantageous spot at all as you sit here at 5-13 in the league. That's really, really bad any way you slice it. But you'll have your opportunity to fix that moving forward. I'll do this exercise a lot, but I guess I'll finish things off here. If you want to live in the land of hypotheticals, I'll humor you hypothetically here. I believe that LSU likely needs 14 wins in league play to feel good about getting into the tournament. You say, well, you always say 13. You always say 13. I do often. But the committee's not going to look at you and say, oh, really nice job against Missouri and Ole Miss and Auburn. That's really good wins there. Nice job against Bama. They're not. You have 1 chance left to post a solid series win. It's 2 weeks against Texas A&M. So I think because your non-conference strength of schedule stinks and your win-loss record against teams of consequence in the SEC to this point stinks, I don't feel comfortable giving you the benefit of the doubt at 13. It might happen, but I feel like it has to be 14. So if we're living in hypothetical land and you feel like it has to be 14, you can only lose 16 league games. If you can sweep Auburn, this is hypothetical land we're living in. If you can sweep Auburn, all of a sudden you're 7-12, and all you've got to do the rest of the way is go 7-2. It's hard. I feel like I did that different on paper. You can sweep Auburn, you get to 7-12. 7-12 has 11 games left. 7-4. There it is. That changes the math a little bit, but it's 7-4. It's doable at that point. It feels daunting right now. This is a huge opportunity. Auburn's been swept 3 times, and they've lost 7 SEC games in a row. It's a daunting task. But we'll see. LSU gets 2 out of 3 at Missouri. When we come back, I've got Saints draft thoughts. I've kind of been reserved on these for the last 6 weeks because I can't look at every mock draft that's ever been mock drafted. But we'll do that. Our baseball breakdowns all season long, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar. I also bring you our Tuesday shows right here on The Hunt Palmer Show.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electric. Love our friends over at Boudreaux's Electric. Neil and Melissa have been running Boudreaux's Electric for 40 years. You do something for 40 years, you got a pretty good handle on what you're doing. They're a premier Generac generator dealer. That means they're in the top 3% nationwide. Give yourself the peace of mind of knowing the power's not going to go out on me in my home or at my commercial office. Look, the time to think about this is not after the storm blows through and we've lost power for 6 days. Kind of a futile exercise there. You got to get out in front of this thing. And that's what the folks at Boudreaux's Electric will do to you. They'll come out to your home or your business. They'll survey your needs. They'll say, this is what I need. These are the square footage I have. This is what I want powered. They'll determine what generator you need. They'll install that with the highest quality in copper and wiring, tubing, and they'll do most of that installation underground so it's not a huge eyesore outside of your home or your business. Give yourself that peace of mind with the folks at Boudreaux's Electric. That's Boudreaux's Electric.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Join us for the Wednesday edition of Live at Lunch from Roca Pizzeria on Government Street in Mid-City. Scott Rabelais with us. Wes Reynolds from VEASAN and professional sports handicapper Randy McKay. Live at Lunch, 11 a.m. Wednesday on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
ESPN Baton Rouge and the Baton Rouge Clinic bring you the Dreams Come True Radiothon. Dreams Come True is an organization designed to help grant dreams for children with life-threatening illnesses and their families. The Dreams Come True Radiothon is presented today by Boudreaux's Electric, Mid-City Title, and Unique Physique. Donate today at 1045ESPN.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
So we are in draft week, and it is time for the New Orleans Saints to embark on what I've called a very, 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 very important chapter of the future of the franchise, because this is not an organization that is in a position to upgrade itself through free agency in a significant way. Not this offseason, not next offseason. And in my opinion, the New Orleans Saints are not close to being a championship contender in the NFL. And so how do you change that? Because they were for over a decade. And it's not just because of Drew Brees. He's a huge part of it. But you can rekindle that pretty quickly if you do things the right way. Now, to do things the right way, the Saints are going to have to do them a different way than they have. They have long traded up, mortgaged the future to select one player. That has to stop this year in a big way. They've got to take picks and get young players and hit on them. And it's got to start in this NFL draft. And it's got to start in the first round. Now, I went through a pretty quick, admittedly, exercise grabbing mock drafts. I found as many as I could find from like reputable organizations. Say what you will about each organization or each person. It was not done to see who's right and who's wrong. It was more so to just get a national feel on where things are headed with the Saints. At ESPN, Jordan Reed's got Olu Fashanu going to the Saints. Field Yates has Olu Fashanu going to the Saints. CBS, Pete Prisco, Olu Fashanu going to the Saints. Now, Chris Trapeso from CBS has Demarius Mims from Georgia going to the New Orleans Saints. So another tackle, but a different one. But Will Brinson from CBS Sports, Olu Fashanu. John Breach from CBS Sports, Olu Fashanu. Then I go over to NBC, Kyle Dvoracek, Olu Fashanu, Connor Rogers, Olu Fashanu. Okay, we understand I just pulled 7 mock drafts, and 6 of them had Olu Fashanu, and 1 had the next tackle down on most people's board. So the general consensus is the Saints have a desperate need, and this is where they're going to go. We had a pretty good feel a couple of years ago on where the Saints were going to go, and they ended up with Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. And you know, sometimes you have no idea. And I didn't hear anybody much talk about Peyton Turner. Like Mark Davenport wasn't on my list. But that's where the feeling is things are headed. And that would be perfectly fine if the Saints took Olu Fashanu for me. I know if you've listened to Matt Moscona on our station after me, that's been his wish for a couple of months now. The question is now not whether or not that's a good pick, because we'll talk about that when the draft is over. And I think it would be a fine pick. What if it's not? What if it's not Olu Fashanu because someone trades up and into the top 10 to take him, or he comes off the board right in front of you? You never know what's going to happen on draft night, because you look at all these mock drafts, and if you look back on them 24 hours after the draft is over, you go, oh, well, we didn't know that was going to happen, or they were going to trade up for him, or that guy was going to fall, and that meant they were going to come up and get him. Like, you don't know. But for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to go, what if they don't take Olu Fashanu because he's not there, or because there's another player on the board they feel like they need to have? Well, you don't figure Joe Alt's going to be there. It feels like the Chargers are a favorite there early in the top 5. What if it's J.C. Latham? Okay. You say, well, he plays right tackle. Fashanu's played left tackle. We need a left tackle. I'll get to that in a second. What if it's Talise Fuenga? He's another right tackle. What if it's Amarius Mims like Chris Trapasso's mock draft? Well, those guys play right tackle. Like, we need a left tackle. Here's the deal. You're not drafting in this draft for the 2024 Saints. I know that's the fun way to think about it. I know that's the way that we've often thought about the New Orleans Saints because they've been so close over the last 15 years that you're planning on your first-round pick stepping in and making an impact on a division champion and a team that fights to win the Super Bowl. This team is not going to do that. You're drafting for the next great Saints team. Maybe that's 2 years from now. Maybe that's 3 years from now. Maybe that's 4 years from now. But if you tell me you've got somebody on your board that you think is Ryan Ramczyk, who never went over and played left tackle, but he played right tackle at an all-pro level, I don't care. We'll figure out left tackle as we continue to build this roster. It may not be completely fixed in 2024, and we may have to put James Hurst out there or whatever the case may be. And guess what? You're not going to be a great team. I'm not drafting for the needs of 2024. I'm drafting for the future of the franchise. So if that's J.C. Latham, if that's Taliese Fuaga, if that's Amarius Mims, I'm completely fine with it. Now, if you start looking at something completely off the wall, which I think is a waste of a conversation, looking at some kind of linebacker or safety, which is completely asinine discussion, well, we'll start talking about it. But if you want to talk about Brock Bowers, I'll talk about that. Well, Brock Bowers doesn't address our needs at tackle. Okay, well, maybe you think he's the face of your offense. You can make him what Travis Kelce is, what Antonio Gates once was, what Rob Gronkowski was. And you can have him in your lineup for 10 years. Okay, I will live with that because we're not trying to address situations that arise in September. We're talking about the next great Saints team. I want them to take a tackle. I hope he can play left tackle because that's a really hard position to fill, and it's a very important thing to do. But the Saints have found a left tackle in a later round. Terron Armstead is a great player. It can be done. My requirements for the New Orleans Saints coming up on Thursday night in this NFL draft: do not mortgage future picks and draft for the future of the franchise, not to try to have a 2-game better record in 2024. Because I feel like that would be short-sighted and counterproductive. It's the way this franchise has run for the last 3 years, and it hasn't worked at all. And do not let the record from the New Orleans Saints in 2023 fool you. It's the worst schedule I've ever seen an NFL team play, and they couldn't get their head above water. They're a long way away. It starts Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I want you to use a lot of picks. I want you to look at positions of need on your roster. But for the long term, when I talk about right tackle, you go, well, Ramczyk might play. He might not. And even if he does, do you feel really good about him playing in 2025? I don't. I don't care about 2024 right now. It's a hard thing to say when you bleed the black and gold. And I know so many of you do, and I love it. I love the passion. But you do have to admit that, like, it's a long way off. But it can get fixed because the Saints have done it in the draft before. They have hit on high round players. They have hit on middle and late round picks. And they're going to have to do that. I'll be just petrified if the Saints trade their second round pick, 2 of the 5ths, and a second next year to move up 4 spots to make sure they get Fashanu. Which that's the guy everybody wants. Give me that guy. Give me that guy. But you feel like you have to move up in front of the next team that wants to get a tackle. So now you've given away 4 assets for somebody that you don't know about anybody. The only thing you can know in the draft is how many options you have. And the Saints have been famous for limiting their options. It has to stop. I'm perfectly fine with J.C. Latham. I'm perfectly fine with Olu Fashanu. I'm perfectly fine with Fuenga or Mims, who play on the right side. Even Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. I don't think you're going to take him at 14. But if you moved back and got more picks, gasp. If they moved back and got more picks, could you find a really good tackle there? I think you could. It's a deep tackle draft. If you wanted to move back, you can do it. I have no confidence the New Orleans Saints will do that. But we'll see. 2 rules. Don't mortgage the future and don't draft solely for the 2024 Saints. If the Saints do that, you're going to see a guy here on Friday who's like, well, that's job well done. Keep it rolling tonight. That's our look at the Saints. We'll talk more about it with Sharief Ishaq coming up in the bottom of hour number 2. All right, when we come back, Glenn West on the Tigers. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com is where you find them. I'm told it was a huge success over the weekend with the Parade of Homes. Those of you who went out and saw some of the great homes here around the Baton Rouge area that are on the market, some of the custom builds, AVSS was there at one of those homes. Mitchell Fisher was demoing some of the great things that he can do. If you're building a home in the near future and want to have it wired as it's being constructed, it makes things so much easier. You don't have to drill a bunch of holes early and kind of mess up your living situation for a day. Hey, they love to do that kind of stuff and are happy to help you with it. If you're already in a home, want to look into brand new audio system, whether it's just as simple as some speakers that control with your app or voice automation, which they can do at Audio Video Security Solutions, they're the folks you need to call. Check out some of their great stuff on Instagram. It's AVSS_BR, AVSS_BR, whether it's whole home audio, TV installation, video, surveillance, your security system. They can handle all of that right here in our Baton Rouge area. It's Mitchell Fisher and the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions at avssla.com.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Moscona inviting you to join us for Tuesday's AFR, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Shay Dixon stops by for his weekly visit, talk recruiting and transfer portal. LSU back on the diamond against Nicholls, 3-6, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Tuesday show is always brought to you by Pluckers. Want to watch the NFL draft? You can do it at Pluckers Wing Bar, Nicholson, just south of campus. Of course, all Louisiana on Bluebonnet as well. Always bring our Tuesday shows. Always on Tuesdays. Glenn West, go 24/7, and he's with us today on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glenn, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Hunt. How about yourself?
Doing quite well. Did LSU Baseball take any steps forward in Columbia?
I think so. Look, I mean, you were just hoping that they would find a way to scrape together a couple win stretch here for an SEC series, and I thought the Friday and Sunday games were kind of a perfect blueprint, if you will, of how they can kind of get that done. I mean, obviously, when you have Gage Trump go 7 innings and strike out 14, you'd like to see that kind of carry over week to week. But the biggest takeaway that I had is that I think they finally settled in on some rotations here. I think they've found a lineup that can work for them. But you've got to string together the consistency angle of it right now, and I think 2 games is great to kind of get that confidence, that momentum building within the group. But you'd like to see that carry over from a weekend to the next weekend, and I think that's where LSU's at right now. I think that they have some good. I think they found a way to set up the pitching to where you can feel confident if they can get that Nate Ackenhausen, Griffin Herring 1-2 punch as a Game 3 grouping. I really like that, and I really like it if they can kind of settle in consistently with those 2 guys as Sunday starters. I think those are probably some of my bigger takeaways from the weekend.
Would you start Griffin Herring?
I think you probably just leave him in the bullpen, just because if you do kind of get into a situation on a Friday or a Saturday where you have to go to him, you'd like to have that option available. And I thought Nate Ackenhausen did a nice job on Sunday. He had the one inning there where it looked a little shaky, and he's a pitcher that's so much based on location and command. But I thought in 3 of his 4 innings he was lights out, and if you can get 4 solid innings out of him, and then have Herring come out and pitch 4 or 5 solid innings as well, then that's kind of your blueprint for those Sunday games going forward.
All right, let's talk offense then. Ashton Larson, how surprised are you that he's kind of emerged as one of the outfield bats based on what you thought his role would be back in February?
Yeah, didn't think he would be this prominent of a player for them at this point in the season, but man, major hat tip to him. He's been fantastic. I think you can absolutely look at his swing and say that's a future All SEC kind of player. He's got such a smooth swing, such a repeatable kind of approach at the plate. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I think Jay Johnson has told us, at least in the last week or two, is just how bought in he is to the approach, and how successful he's been by kind of sticking to the plan of what LSU's offense wants to be. And you saw him show a little power this weekend with the home run in that final game. He had a nice triple as well, and he's got some speed on the bags as well. So the fact that he's been a consistent hitter for you has been a real positive for LSU, and I think that he's absolutely somebody that's deserving of the everyday role that he's in right now.
We know that Brady Neal's dealing with a little bit of an injury. What does that mean for the catching rotation?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to play it safe with Brady. I wouldn't be surprised if they have him maybe DH a game or 2 this weekend. I think they tried to kind of see if he could battle it out, and I think he played a little bit in that Saturday game. I think they brought him in as a pinch hitter in that game as well. So they're I think, it makes sense to kind of maybe hold off on the catching for him for a little bit. But look, I thought Alex Milazzo gave you some really good at bats, especially in that Sunday game, moving the offense, getting on base. I think he had a walk there, and then he also had a single that he ripped into the opposite field. So just a veteran hitter, a veteran guy that I think can get you some really good at bats. And Jay Johnson also said that the Sunday game was probably the best defensive game he's ever seen Alex Milazzo catch. So if you can get that kind of consistency out of him, I think you're in a really good spot, with the catching situation, and obviously what you have with Stravinsky there in that DH role, and he can also catch for you a little bit as well. So I think they're set up fine. If Neal is going to need a week or two to kind of get that shoulder healed.
Any concern with Luke Holman's outing?
No, I don't think so. He was solid, and he has been really, really solid, and I think he's your best option right now as a starter, right? I mean, he's the guy that you kind of have to believe he can get it right. I mean, he had a really rough outing this last weekend, and I think it's just a learning experience kind of deal for him. But he's also had some really, really elite showings in SEC play against some top-notch offenses in the country. So I wouldn't put too much stock in him having some struggles here. I think it's just kind of the ebbs and flows with the season. And I know he's given up, I think it's 11 runs over his last 3 games. That's not exactly what you'd love to see from him as your kind of ace guy, but I think you have to just trust that he can get it right and get LSU kind of back on track.
Auburn's coming in. You know what everybody's thinking. Is it realistic that LSU could sweep Auburn at home?
Yeah, you got to strive for that. But I know LSU, and I know the way that they think, and they really want to take this one game at a time. They're not in a position here where I think you can go into a weekend expecting them to sweep or expecting them even to win a series. I think that consistency angle here is super, super important. And Jay was telling us yesterday that, look, they're top 5 for Auburn in terms of the batting order. They're all legit players in the SEC. And, I don't know how much of this coach speak, but he talked about, if they were playing in any other conference, they'd be, top 2 or 3, 4 team in another conference. But it just so happens that they're playing in the SEC, and they've actually had a schedule that's very similar to LSU's in terms of the start and the tough teams that they've had to play so far. So I can't take any team for granted, but I do like LSU to come out and get a series win this weekend. I think you've got to carry over that consistency. I think they've found some momentum, and we've talked about this some, but just any little bit of success that you have as a team can really help in baseball, and I think kind of help, with the momentum, with the psyche of a team, and kind of the belief that you can kind of turn the season around. So this weekend will be a big step forward in seeing if they can actually do that. And I think 3 wins is absolutely the goal that you shoot for, but you certainly are happy with it with the series win as well, with just 2.
Is Jaden Daniels going to be the second pick in the draft?
I think so. I mean, look, this is the week where all the information's kind of getting thrown out there about trades and which teams could trade up and all that stuff. I think that Washington is settled on their guy. I think he's the clear-cut number 2 pick, and I think that he's the number 1 quarterback in this draft. And I know that's probably a little bit of a bias here, having covered him for a whole year or a whole 2 years, but dude's just he's electric, man, and I think he's probably one of the more polished quarterbacks that has come out here in the last half decade, and can do it all for you. So I'd be a little surprised if he drops past 3, but I think he's probably safe bet to go at number 2.
Is Brian Thomas safe in the first round? We've seen the Vegas numbers move a little bit back on him.
I would think so. I think there's a lot of teams that are intrigued by him. Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, I think, are a couple teams that I've seen linked to him. So, yeah, I would expect Brian to still be a first-round pick. I think that's the expectation. And we've actually got an interview coming out with him tomorrow that you can find over on our Good 247 YouTube page. So we'll get kind of his thoughts on just what the draft is like and what he's kind of been focusing on heading into the year.
Awesome. Last one here. Give me a round in the draft for Mason Smith.
I'm going round 2. I've been seeing I've been seeing a lot of Mason Smiths in round 2, round 3. And I think that there's kind of a buzz around him right now that he could be one of the prospects that maybe a team kind of, picks for potential and athleticism more than anything else.
He's Glenn West, senior writer, Go 24/7, with us every single Tuesday. We appreciate the time, Glenn.
All right. Thanks, Hunt. Appreciate it.
I'll be sure and check out that interview with Brian Thomas coming up on their YouTube page later on this week as we get ready for the NFL draft. We'll close out hour number 1. A little bit of a bouquet coming up next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, it's nothing like big, spacious, brand new closet, customized to your exact needs. How about a transformation of your bathroom? It's kind of dated, a little bit older. It can be changed, and it can be changed with one call. You don't have to call 4 different contractors to handle 4 different parts of the job. Nope, David Duvall and his team, a licensed contractor, and they can handle it from start to finish for you. It's one call to one contractor. It's One Bath and Closets. Maybe it's a full-scale bathroom renovation or remodel. Maybe it's just a tub-to-shower conversion. You take that tub out that you never use, go ahead and put a gorgeous glass walk-in shower, changes the functionality of your bathroom, changes the aesthetic of your bathroom, and adds a little value to that home of yours as well. Starts with a free consultation. You can get that online at OneBathAndClosets.com, OneBathAndClosets.com.
In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com. The Bench with Jacob Hester and T-Bob Hebert. Mornings from 7 to 10 on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
While you're busy with spring cleaning, we'd like to add to the clutter in your bank account to the tune of $2,000. It's the 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge Spring Cha-Ching, powered by Citizens Bank and Trust. Register today at 1045ESPN.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Some good news being reported today by Scott Rabelais of The Advocate. Jay Clark, LSU National Championship winning gymnastics coach, reported to be staying here in Baton Rouge after some interest from his alma mater and former employer, University of Georgia. The Gym Dogs were the pinnacle of the sport for a long time and have slipped a little bit. And LSU is right up there at the top of the sport and certainly reached the top this year. And Jay Clark spurning home, a program that once fired him, to stay here. And I wanted to talk briefly about gymnastics. I don't ever talk gymnastics on this show. I know that Jay goes on with the guys in the mornings during the season. Jay Clark comes on with me one pregame show every single year on the football show on the LSU Sports Radio Network. I really enjoy my time with Jay. He's a big football fan, loves to talk football. But we don't talk a lot of gymnastics like in March. But I do want to mention the national championship, obviously. And I want to mention it for two reasons. One, because this is not a team that fluked into a national title. Like, it's not like Coastal Carolina in baseball. Just all of a sudden something happened and it just clicked for 5 weeks. It's not that at all. This is a program that has been banging on that door every single year for a decade. Just banging on that door, drumming up interest, selling out the PMAC, setting attendance record, leading the nation in attendance, getting deep into the NCAA tournament, and having close calls. And it finally paid off. It reminds me a lot of like Gonzaga men's basketball, who's been to the Elite Eight 6 different times, been to the Final Four twice, been to the national final twice. They've been in the Elite Eight. They're just knocking on the door, hadn't quite gotten there. Arkansas's baseball program has been so good for 10 years. And they got all the way to one pop-up down the right field line, and it didn't happen. We're spoiled in Baton Rouge because we've seen national championships a lot. Skip made it an annual trip to Omaha, and the 90s was ridiculous. But Coach Maneri was able to get us there and win one, and now Jay's gotten us there and won one. Kim Mulkey gotten us there to win one. Football teams, nobody plays for and wins national championships. And I use nobody facetiously, but like it's just very rare. And LSU's success in national championship games is unbelievable. Only lost one in baseball and football. But it's really, really, really hard to do. Ask some of the surrounding athletic departments how hard it is to win a national championship. Ask A&M. Ask Ole Miss or Mississippi State. Like, it never happens. They both have one to their name. It was so cool for them to have consistently been at the top of the sport and to finally break through. And I'll tell you this. Nobody is taking Kim Mulkey's most recent trophy off the shelf because South Carolina lost in the Final Four, and nobody is taking Jay Clark's trophy off the shelf because Oklahoma fell off the balance beam. So for all you people that say to be the man, you've got to beat the man, no, you just got to beat whoever's there. I will reference that freaking LSU-Alabama championship game until the day I stop talking into a microphone. Because everybody in purple and gold that was beating their chest wanting to play that game again, I thought, in my opinion, was a lunatic. And I hate the saying, to be the man, you got to beat the man. It's factually incorrect. You have to win all the games. You have to win all the meets in gym. You have to score the highest among the teams that reach the final. Not my fault Oklahoma couldn't stand up on the balance beam, couldn't handle the vault. We did. So, huge ups there. And the last point to this commentary, for the third consecutive time at LSU in a national final, the players, gymnasts in this case, rose to the occasion. Did you see the first half of the LSU women's national championship game against Iowa? They were throwing in threes from everywhere on that court. Arlington, Irving, Grapevine, whatever suburb of Dallas you want to talk to, they were chunking them in. The best offensive half they played all year. LSU Baseball, a couple months later in Omaha. Jack Caglione on the mound. Spraying 2-out singles to drive in runs all over the yard. Thompson, Jobert. Boom. Just incredible 2-out clutch hitting. Thatcher Hurd. Up and down all season. Wyatt Langford hits the homer. Dials in best outing of the year after that. Rising to the occasion at the biggest moment of the year. What did LSU score in that game? Like 17 runs? And then, Jim, you got one event left. You're trailing. What are you going to do on vault? I don't know how they score vault. I'm not going to pretend like I know how they score vault. Don't fall. It's all I know. I know they set a school record. I know that. That's something, and I've asked Kim Mulkey about this on my pregame show. I've asked Jay Johnson about this, and I will ask Jay Clark about this. What does it feel like to you as a coach to have your team that you've recruited and developed and spent time with and practiced with and watched compete, seen them at their worst, seen them at their best? Some of these gymnasts have gone through ridiculous injury problems, close calls in the NCAA tournament, to when they had to have it to be the best they can be. Like, I can't think of anything that is more rewarding as a coach than that. Huge, huge kudos to Jay Clark and the entire LSU gymnastics program for a job well done, a job finished. They were on that journey to the national. It was coming. And they got there. And you know what? Around here, we win a lot. It's kind of fun. A lot of natties down the street there at LSU. That's it for hour number one. Our Tuesday show is always brought to you by Pluckers. We'll come back with a lot in hour number two. Excited to chat with Sharief Ishaq about Saints and Pels. We'll also hear some sound from Jay Johnson as well. Come back with us after Sports Center. You're listening to a Tuesday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show.
Center.
I'm Christine Lisi. Uncertainty surrounding the status of a pair of NBA stars for their respective Game 2s tonight. Clippers small forward Kawhi Leonard, right knee inflammation, questionable against Dallas. He's missed the last 9 games. Bucks power forward Giannis Antetokounmpo, doubtful against Indiana due to that calf strain. Milwaukee and LA each up 1-0 in their first-round series. Suns seek to even things up at a game apiece with the Timberwolves. Game 2 tonight, 7 Eastern, ESPN Radio. A guarantee from center Joel Embiid that the 76ers will win their series against the Knicks, even though they trail 2-0. Embiid, after the Game 2 loss, said the Sixers are good, know what they've got to fix, will keep fighting, and are the better team. ESPN NBA analyst Jay Williams.
He's wrong. With him not being healthy, they're not the better team. They're the more talented team, but the better team is the team that executes the details, and that's where the Knicks live constantly.
Stanley Cup playoffs first round. Canucks goaltender Thatcher Demko, undisclosed injury, out for at least Game 2 against the Predators tonight, 10 Eastern on ESPN2. Casey DeSmith gets the start in net in his place.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Candy. Coming on Wednesday, I'll tell you the worst potential fits for quarterbacks not named Caleb Williams. It's unsportsmanlike, 6 a.m. Eastern, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I direct your attention to something quite extraordinary?
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show. The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios. This is Hunt Palmer.
Hour number 2, Hunt Palmer Show on a Tuesday. Hope your work week is off to a good start. Gorgeous weather down here in South Louisiana today. Hope you are out there enjoying some of it. You're stuck inside working and you listen to us, though. We do appreciate that very, very much. LSU and Nicholls tonight at 6:30. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the hour. Joe Cryer and John Emery from LSU football have entered their names into the transfer portal. I'll give you my thoughts on that coming up in 15 minutes. And Sharief Ishaq at 2:30. Tons to talk about Sharief. Certainly the Saints draft coming up on Thursday, with the Pels locked up in a first-round series with the 1 seed Oklahoma City Thunder, down 1-0. We'll get Sharief's thought on all of that. But we'll start with baseball here. Our baseball breakdowns all season long are brought to you by Pluckers. Jay Johnson met with the media yesterday in advance of this game tonight with Nicholls and talked about the type of baseball that it took to go up there and win their first series of the season in SEC play against Missouri.
It's just the complimentary baseball when your pitchers are out there giving up zeros and then you're scoring runs. Everybody can settle into the game a little bit better. And then it's what made Saturday harder is, credit them. They did a good job. They had 3 2-out hits in the first 2 innings. And, ultimately it was the difference in the game.
Jay has talked so much about the importance of 2-strike and 2-out production this year. And it obviously is very important. It's important to get the third out when you have 2 outs. It's like third down defense. And, 2-strike hits hurt more to the pitcher who feels like they're ahead. They're 1 pitch away from finishing the at-bat. You're theoretically ahead in the count, and you ought to be able to make a good pitch and not getting it done. It does feel like it's been disproportionate with LSU this year on how much teams have done with 2 outs against LSU and how little LSU has conversely done with 2 outs. And I think, as I have often said, I just feel like it's more emblematic of good teams are going to get more hits with 2 outs because they get more hits anyway, and good teams are going to get more outs with two outs because they have better pitchers and vice versa. But I think he was happy with a lot of what they did over the weekend against Missouri, but obviously the start that Luke got off to was just not something that he had anticipated. Ashton Larson was kind of the star of the show. Pseudo homecoming for the Overland Park, Kansas native up there in the Midwest in Columbia, Missouri. And he's elevated himself not only just in this weekend, but really over the last month.
He's got the right type of heartbeat, the right type of maturity. He's able to keep the game slow. And really, that's why he's elevated himself past, not just some of the younger players in the program, but some of the older players in the program. And he's a baseball guy. He will work and work and work. There's some real good qualities in terms of that and just maturity, emotional control. And then he's a good hitter. You know what I mean? He's put a lot of work in over his life to just be a good hitter. And so now you're taking the work that he's put in, the physical talent that is there, and he's maximizing it because his mind is right.
You know, he just could have run into a home run swing in Fayetteville. He was kind of a last-ditch effort at that point for LSU at Arkansas. We'll throw Larson in there and see if he can put a good swing on one. And so you can't put too much stock in that. But at this point, Ashton Larson has played in 14 of LSU's 18 SEC games. He has started 10 of the 14 SEC games. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, he's hitting .395 with a .500 on base in league games. Like, that's not a sample size great enough to call him the next All-American at LSU. It's a sample size great enough for me to know that he's one of the best hitters they got this year right now. And so he's going to continue to play a lot. Another guy they're going to continue to use a lot is Griffin Herring, and Jay called him best pitcher on the team.
There's no argument right now. I mean, he has been our best pitcher. With 5 SEC wins and 4 of them, he's done exactly what he just did. And so I'm proud of him. I think the thing that I would want all the other players to emulate is there hasn't been one time where he's even worried about where we have him or how I'm set up. He's been a very team guy in that element. And then competitiveness. I have always believed the pitcher that starts you off in the series and the guy that's in that role where you have the win, as long as they go do their job, they have to have tremendous makeup and competitiveness, and Griffin has that. And, it's allowed him to excel in that role.
And that's the role I want to keep him in. I talked about it at the top of my show. I don't have any interest in Griffin Herring starting games right now. There are very few things this LSU baseball team can count on right now. And one of them is Griffin Herring coming in late in the game and nailing it down. He's been sensational. In league games, he has 32 strikeouts and 5 walks. He throws a ton of strikes. And it's not like Griffin Herring has some freak show pitch. He's not dripping with raw stuff. Like Kevin Kopps had a cutter and a slider like you just couldn't even see. And some guys you see that come out of the bullpen are just wicked. And Herring stuff is good enough, but he does one thing really, really well. And that's why I believe he's had the success he's had. He tunnels his fastball and his slider very, very well. It's just going to be 92 with the fastball. That used to be throwing smoke. Right now, as far as bullpen arm goes, it's really not. But it looks the same as the slider coming out of his hands, and the slider's tight enough to where they don't recognize it until it's too late. And there's enough downward tilt to it. He just creates a very uncomfortable at bat, even for right-handers dealing with a fastball slider. And so he's ahead of the count most of the time. Guys can't pick up what the pitch it is, and there's just not very much hard contact against Griffin Herring these days. He's been really, really, really good. I've been super impressed. Bummer news from Jay's news conference yesterday, talking about Brady Neal and his injury before Saturday's game.
Well, Brady got hurt Saturday before the game. He was kind of limited in what he could do. He really toughed it out, credit to him to be able to get in there and play a little bit on Saturday, but he was not available to play.
Which is, obviously not what you want. LSU's really deep at catcher. Milazzo's caught. Stravinsky's caught a bunch. And Neal is kind of your left-handed option. And he's also a left-handed option off the bench late in games. I understand that he went in there to do that on on Saturday to pinch hit late, and obviously didn't go well. And he hasn't had a good run in SEC play. I'm well aware, but he is an option off your bench that you don't have. And so now what ends up happening, I know, there's more on Neal's injury before we get to Milazzo.
He's had a sore shoulder, and he was trying to do some therapy on it and, aggravated it a little bit. And just so it's a soreness issue and a mobility issue. And when you're talking about swinging the bat, that can be, difficult. But he's strong for his size. And, obviously we saw with the back thing, he was able to recover and get past that. So I don't think that it's a long-term thing at all. But we're reevaluating that today.
So what you're going to see, obviously, is Stravinsky and Milazzo a bunch moving forward. And he spoke to, and I know based on the magic moment that he gave on Sunday and how he felt about the way that Alex played on Sunday, that's something you're going to see a lot of moving forward.
I'm good with all three of those guys. And, I'm proud of Alex. I told the team yesterday, sometimes you just need somebody to pick you up and just like, we're not losing today, based on the intent that I'm playing with. And I thought he really did that yesterday. Obviously singled. There was a walk in there. There was like a a heavy pitch count at bat, moved the offense well, and caught outstanding. That was his best game. I mean, he's a good cat. He's a great catcher, but that was his best game that I remember here behind the plate.
So, look, I'd like to have Brady Neal available. I'll be quite honest. I'd like to have him available. He's left-handed, which Stravinsky and Milazzo are not. He can hit for power, which we have seen. And he's a pretty athletic kid back there behind home plate. So I would like to have the option. Do I think that going to Milazzo and Stravinsky every day while Neal gets ready is going to be a real difference maker for this team? I don't. So you just need those guys to play well. And Milazzo played very well on Sunday. Stravinsky had a big fly in the game over the weekend. So look, they've got depth at catcher, that's for sure. And that's something that Jay Johnson said after his first year when they ran out of depth at catcher and you had to send McManus out there who was hurt and having to do it anyway. He said, we're never having that situation happen again. And in that first class, you bring in Fry and you bring in Jones and you bring in Neal and you keep Milazzo and you keep Stravinsky, and catcher's a spot they have stocked up. And so they'll be okay with those two guys back there at catcher. The last piece is something I screwed up at the top of the show because I screwed it up in my column for On 3, and that's why if you go back and listen to the top of the show when I seem very unsure as I'm going through numbers, it's because I was looking at them going, wait, none of this is right, and I already wrote this morning, so I had to, in the break, text Shay Dixon at On 3 and go, hey, hold my column because I got the math wrong because math is for dorks. No, I'm just not very good at math, and this is really easy math that I messed up. But I'll get to it to correct myself in this segment. But Jay was asked, do you talk about the math with your team?
I already went down that road a couple weeks ago, like I said, and I don't think it necessarily helped. I think simplifying, taking not a different approach, but a very deliberate approach with my interactions with them and what's at the forefront. Like, we need a lot more than going through that. They all want to do it. Like, they know we're fighting an uphill battle. But I'm proud of this. Is a good week. It would have been a great week had we won on Saturday. But for them to win Tuesday, win 2 out of 3 on the road, it's a step in the right direction. And they know that it's not over, but they know we have a lot of work to do.
They do have a ton of work to do, and honestly, I'm disappointed in myself. If you heard the top of the show, we were not doing so good physically. Hunt Palmer was not on Sunday afternoon and most of Monday, so I was not paying attention to baseball standings and records and all that kind of stuff. I was incapacitated. So I got up this morning and got into some of the things with my column and ended up writing it, and I had worked it out in my head where, the math looks pretty decent if you can sweep Auburn. And then I realized that I'd done it wrong. So I'm an idiot, first of all. I have revised my column for On 3 when Shay posted a little bit later. But here's the situation. They have their work cut out for them. They're 5-13. I believe that 13 is potentially fighting a losing battle. And I will tell you why. Because your non-conference strength of schedule stinks. Texas has had the bottom fall out. Yeah, Louisiana Lafayette has had a really nice year. But nothing you did in the pre-conference is worth a flip, and nothing you've played in non-conference play during the midweek has been worth a flip either. There's nothing to point to on that that's good at all. You've got a non-conference RPI right now sitting at 154. Non-conference strength of schedule at 154. That's not good. So with that being said, if you're standing on a 13-17 league resume that includes series wins over Missouri, Auburn, Alabama, and Ole Miss, that's really flimsy. Really flimsy. Because quite frankly, those teams aren't any good. You got one chance to get a good weekend. That's the next weekend against Texas A&M. So we always give kind of 13, you're in the tournament, 16, 17, you host, 20, you're national seed, and kind of give that sliding scale. And it's all relative, and it all depends on how everything shakes out nationally. But I feel like 14's probably where you need to be. And to get to 14, you've got to go 9-3. Now, 9-3 for this team sounds remarkably difficult. It does. That. There's no one that's saying, oh, well, they can do that. There are some of you that are saying, yeah, that's going to be difficult, but they could. And there's some of you that's saying, why the hell are you talking about the NCAA tournament? This team stinks. And I get it. 9-3 sounds really, really hard. 6-3 gets real doable, in my opinion. 6-3 is doable if you can sweep Auburn. That's where this thing flips. And that'll be kind of my thought as we enter Friday. Like, if you can do it and get to 6-3, like, that becomes really doable. Now, A&M comes in here and sweeps you, then you're toast. But that's where this thing kind of hinges. You win 1 this weekend, turn the lights out. You win 2 this weekend, man, trying to go 7-2 down the stretch, not real likely. You get all 3 this weekend, you can start to have hope. We'll see. That's our baseball breakdown presented by Plucker's Wing Bar. You're looking for something to do tonight? Plucker's Trivia. Always an enjoyable time. 8:30, Nicholson location. We'll think things start at 8:30. We'll have you out of there by 10 o'clock. 5 rounds of live action trivia. Winners get gift cards, got cold beers, got delicious food. Always an enjoyable time watching some NBA basketball playoffs and win some gift cards. So come on out and see us at Pluckers tonight, 8:30 at the Nicholson location. Transfer portal news for LSU football. That's next.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show.
Visit us at LeBear's Baton Rouge Casino this spring for all the hoops and hockey playoff action. We got the biggest screens, the best food and drink, plus giving away pin cash bonuses and prizes to Pin Play Rewards members. Can't beat that. Big screens, great food, and pin cash. If you're not a member, join today by downloading and registering for the Pin Play app right there in the App Store. So unlock all the fun, including a chance to win up to $2,000 in pin cash. All this and more. Make LeBear's Baton Rouge Casino your spring sports viewing headquarters. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Our listeners fire off their opinions on the GymsFirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the GymsFirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Join us for the Wednesday edition of Live at Lunch from Roca Pizzeria on Government Street in Mid-City. Scott Rabelais with us. Wes Reynolds from VEASAN and professional sports handicapper Randy McKay. Live at Lunch, 11 a.m. Wednesday on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Mark your calendar and invite your friends as we celebrate the NFL Draft in style with the Boudreaux's Electric ESPN Baton Rouge Draft Party, live from Don Juan Cigar Bar and exclusively on the 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel. Join us Thursday, April 25th at 7 p.m. and hang with the ESPN Baton Rouge Dream Team while indulging in the finest cigars paired with signature cocktails. It's the Boudreaux's Electric ESPN Baton Rouge Draft Party at Don Juan Cigar Bar and live on the 104.5 ESPN YouTube channel.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Shout out to Pluckers bringing our Tuesday shows each and every week. Talk with Sharief Ishaq, Saints and Pels, coming up in about 10 minutes from right now. News from the transfer portal today. Expected that LSU would have some attrition post-spring. That's just the world that we live in here in college football, but I was certainly curious as to where that attrition would come from. One of these new announcements is not necessarily attrition from LSU because you weren't counting him against this class anyway, and that's John Emery Jr. John Emery announced that he's in the transfer portal and will potentially look for a new home to play one last season of college football. John Emery came in the same class as Derek Stingley Jr. and Anthony Bradford. He was in the same signing class as a quarterback who many of you have probably forgotten about in Peter Parrish. And baseball, football, 5-star recruit, first-round draft potential Mo Hampton was in John Emery's class as well. It was the class of 2019. He has been in Baton Rouge for a very, very, very long time. He has had his highs and lows. I thought he looked great as a true freshman in mop-up time for that 2019 team. Certainly had his two moments against Alabama, one a long touchdown in the 2020 game that they lost, and then a huge play in the game that LSU did win in 2022 to get the first touchdown on that swing pass out of the backfield. A huge talent and a guy that battled through a lot, whether it was the off season that he was deemed ineligible to play, which is I'm assuming where he gets this eligibility year back, certainly has the COVID year to get back. Injuries certainly suffered down there near the north end zone on the carry this past year, and a guy that has just battled a lot and has decided he wants to try to play one more year in college football, and you certainly do support that. Number one running back in the nation, LSU was fighting Georgia for his commitment. He was committed to the Bulldogs, visited LSU for that 2018 game that was such a great one that LSU beat Georgia in on that Saturday afternoon in Death Valley. And ended up at LSU, and did have some really good moments, but I think we imagined things could go differently here in Baton Rouge, and they did. Hopefully for him that he has some success at his next stop. The next transfer portal entrant surprised me a little bit, not based on potentially where Joseph Cryer was on the depth chart, just based on timing. Joe Cryer signed with LSU in December and early enrolled. Offensive lineman out of Natchitoches Central, right there in North Louisiana. A late take in this class, a player that was committed to Ole Miss and that LSU brought in. And at the time, I thought it made a lot of sense. In-state player, has kind of that long, lean frame that Brian Kelly really, really likes in offensive linemen. And, sure, you take that in-state player and you realize that it may take some time for that player to build up to be a factor on your team. And I have a hard time believing that Joe Cryer thought he was going to come in the spring and just immediately spring to the top of the depth chart when LSU returns 4 offensive linemen. I don't know anything other than he signed, enrolled, and left after one spring. I don't know if that had to do with Brad Davis. I don't know if that had to do with the caliber of player that were coming in his class. I don't know if he didn't like it at LSU. I don't know anything. It's just that's a really quick exit for a player who had signed his letter of intent and enrolled. I have no idea how the SEC handles players who have only been in college for 4 months, if he can transfer to an SEC school or not. in this cycle, in this transfer portal cycle, if you transfer out or enter the transfer portal right now, you cannot go SEC school to SEC school without sitting out. Now, maybe Joe Cryer's fine sitting out because he didn't figure he was going to play as a freshman anyway, but just a really quick exit. Now, Brad Davis's room is loaded with a bunch of dudes. Now, you're going to lose a lot of them after this coming season. You're going to have to replace essentially the entire starting offensive line, save DJ Chester, very likely. So you're going to have to build that depth up this year and have it come to fruition next year, very likely. And who knows, Joe Cryer could or may not have been a part of that, but it appears he will not be a part of that at this point as he has announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. So when you look at this LSU roster size and number, LSU is now comfortably under the 85. They have room to add 2 or 3 players if they want. We know that they are hosting multiple defensive tackles. Philip Bliddy committed to Auburn over the weekend, so he's out, but there are other players very much alive on LSU's board to potentially join the fray, and we know that defensive tackle will be the first news on that front. There's no real timeline on it because it's not like National Signing Day. Like, the portal's open. Just commit whenever you're ready to go. And at this point, LSU has not had a defensive tackle jump into the boat. There is optimism surrounding Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. There is a hopefulness around Dominic Williams from TCU. But again, you're still waiting on visits to determine how things are going to shake out. We know they have to add defensive tackles. They certainly had room to add defensive tackles. If there's another player or two that could be a take, like, why not? If you've got the room, you've got the room. Go ahead and make it happen. So we'll see as news breaks. We'll get you that. But John Emery looking for another year of college football, and Joe Cryer has decided that his time in Baton Rouge has come to a close after just one semester. He will head to the transfer portal and see where he ends up next. Our Tuesday shows always brought to you by Pluckers. We're back with Sharief Ishaq coming up next.
You are now listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Moscona inviting you to join us for Tuesday's AFR, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Shay Dixon stops by for his weekly visit, talk recruiting and transfer portal. LSU back on the diamond against Nicholls, 3-6, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
All right, let's go down to the 504. That's where we find our guy Sharief Ishaq. Busy time in the 504. Sharief covers it for WDSU and joins us on Tuesdays. Saints got a draft coming up here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the Pels are one game into a first-round series with the Thunder. Sharief, how are we doing?
It depends on which team and which sport you're talking about.
Well, let's talk about whichever one you want to talk about. Which would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about the Pelicans, since that's probably going to be the one that's more recent and playing tomorrow.
Okay, let's talk about something that's a little bit distant but relevant since the last time we spoke. Were you encouraged by the fact they took care of business against Sacramento?
Yeah, people talk about realistic and net matchups. That was a matchup right there, a matchup that they absolutely own. 6 straight wins last time it happened, 94, Nuggets, Timberwolves. I mean, you just have a death grip over certain teams, and that's one team right there. Another team, the Clippers. Lakers, not so much. Just a poor matchup for them. They got it done. They moved on. They got into the playoffs. And then Sunday, I truly think the Thunder a great matchup for the Pelicans. They really are a great matchup, no matter who's playing and who's not playing for the Pelicans. Look, they took them down to the final seconds of the game without Zion Williamson. Now, will it look different Wednesday night? Possibly. I don't think they're going to struggle, and I don't think Brandon Ingram and CJ are going to struggle as much as they did.
Interesting. What's your biggest takeaway from Game 1?
The continued struggles in the final 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
The crunch time numbers just continued to be awful. I mean, just 2 points in the final 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. I mean, it was the basket by C.J. McCollum to make it a 1-point game in the final, 40 seconds of the game. Not pretty. They just got to stop struggling there in the final 3 minutes of a game. That just continues to happen. Ways they can avoid that is making their lives easier by getting easier baskets. Brandon Ingram forcing some shots, has to find a way to be a little more aggressive at getting to the rim and instead of kicking it out. He's got to attack the basket. That is his, that his bread and butter is the mid-range jumper, but he has that length to get to the basket and create some problems for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you got to see that. Stars got to be stars whenever the big games come, and he has to be a star.
Yeah, I'm curious, is that a Willie Green issue, or is it a lack of a plan, or is it just the guys have got to play a little bit better?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I do think that Willie Green has to find a way to make the lineups work a little bit better. Yeah, for sure. But he also has to push his players. He's got to push his players a little bit more. Got to draw up better plays. I necessarily didn't like the play at the end of the game with C.J. McCollum dribbling it for 14 seconds. But they were a big fan of putting the ball in C.J.'s hand. And look, Lou Dort's a monster. He's going to be all defensive first team. He's awesome. But you have to find a way to exploit different matchups. And I get to the number 1 seed, blah, 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 this and that. They play good defense. They shoot well from 3. But you're also one of the top defensive teams in the NBA when it comes to defending the 3. Just got to find a way to be better in terms of matchups within the game and the lineups and getting your best players open easier.
I realize the Pelicans have a nice bench, and they use that very frequently. I'm curious your thoughts on the Jonas and Nance distribution of minutes and where that needs to sit in this series.
I need more Jonas. Jonas is a guy who can punish Chet. He could punish him badly. I think that's, I don't say play through him, but use him, use his size, use him, his, it's not that tall, but I mean, he can bang on the inside with Chet and make it a nightmare for him. I mean, that's just one matchup I like. I would like to see JV play more than he played in that game, 29 minutes. I think he needs to get near that 40-minute mark with everyone else. Having Larry play. Larry didn't play as much, played 19, but I'd like to see JV in there just punishing Chet Holmgren as much as possible. I thought it worked pretty well in the first half, and they kind of went away from it And, I thought, just why not? Get him some more like touches in the paint. Let him back down Chet and get to the rim much easier. I think you should play a little bit through it, but not all the time.
Depending on where you're looking at a line, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, depending on where you're looking at. How do you think that's about right for game 2?
Better than game 1. It was 8.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually, you know what? I know why it's still that high, because they're thinking of it the same way I'm thinking of it. There's no way that the Thunder will shoot 10 of 39 from 3, and SGA is going to, struggle for most of the game until the final minute and a half. I think that they think everything is going to, they knock the rust off. OKC will be, the team that we saw in the regular season that put up a bunch of, numbers from outside. They're the number 1 3-point percentage team in the NBA. So I just think that, like, they see it like that. And I also see that, like I told you, Brandon Ingram and CJ not struggling as much. I do think Brandon will be locked in. You'll see close to that 30-point mark. But, whenever you get to that, who are you going to pick? It's because they're at home, and they're a good team at home, and they're the number 1 seed.
Sharief Ishaq is with us, WDSU, talking all things New Orleans. Let's transfer over to the New Orleans Saints. Sharief, Mickey Loomis met with the media earlier today. I'm assuming he had nothing interesting to say, because there's really not anything interesting that he needs to tell y'all, but was there anything interesting that he said?
I think, like, you could just re-rack every single, pre-draft press conference with him, and his go-to line, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
He did say it's a deep draft when it comes to offensive line and receiver, so that should just indicate which direction they're trying to go in this draft, He also talked about the Marshawn Lattimore. He was asked if, I think Mike Triplett might have asked him, is he going to be on this roster this season? He said yes, but then Catherine Terrell followed up with, does that yes mean, because you can't commit to it? You essentially like, hey, you can't give us a definite answer. And he kind of laughed and said, look, anyone is tradable. I don't want to talk about it, but, anyone could be traded at any time if the deal is right. So he wasn't committing to Marshawn Lattimore necessarily being there 100%. But, I mean, that's the thing I took from it. They know that they need a draft. They think they're going to get a good player at number 14, and it all points to offensive tackle, because they're not sure where Ryan Ramczak's knee is going to be. They're still in the same position he said that they were when Dennis Allen spoke at the owners' meeting. So, and haven't lost faith in Trevor Penning at offensive tackle. So those are, I think, the big key notes that I took away from listening to the 35 minutes of Mickey Loomis just talking about the draft, saying a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can like or hate things that Mickey Loomis has done in terms of the moves he makes or anything he says at a press conference. That pre-draft press conference, like, I don't need him to say anything. Like, what is it there to gain for him being like, yeah, we really think we can get a quality corner there in the third if we trade up. I mean, like, there's just nothing he can say that would do anybody any good. So I appreciate him for giving some time to the media, but it's kind of a lost cause until they make their pick on Thursday. You got a name for me with their first pick?
I'm trying to go 3 for 3 here, 3 straight years. I'm going to go Olu Fashanu from Penn State, the offensive tackle. And I think if he's off the board, Talise Fawaga, the tackle from Oregon State. But I'll go with Olu Fashanu because I've just been stuck on his name for the last month. I mean, I've been saying it wrong and finally figured out how to say it. So I'm going Olu Fashanu because.
Where did you get Fashanu? Because I'm just going off Moscona saying Fashanu.
It's Fashanu. It's Olu Fashanu. That's Ross Jackson saying it that way, Luke Johnson saying that way, and I'll trust both those guys because those guys dive very deep into doing draft stuff. So when Ross and Luke tell me Fashanu, then I'm going Fashanu.
I like it. I like trying to say people's names right. And if it's Fashanu, we'll go with that. Do you think they might try to trade up to get someone, or whether it's Fashanu or whether they try to go up and get another tackle? I don't think they can go high enough to get Joe Alt, but J.C. Latham, do you think they try to move up?
The only way I think they move up to like number 10 if it's Joe Alt fell to number 10. If Alt is at 10, I think the Jets are sitting at number 10, so that would be, giving up maybe. I wouldn't want to give up the second round pick this year. Maybe
I think you would have to.
You would have to, and I don't know if I would want to unless they give back their third round pick. Just because you can't just, like Joe Alt could be a game-changing left tackle for you for years, but it's got to make sense. But if he's there, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, it makes sense, and you get the best, offensive tackle who probably would be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft if the quarterbacks weren't there. So, yeah, I mean, Mickey, he loves to move up. He admitted it today. He loves moving up. I mean, that's his thing. They don't ever move back. They would move back if it made sense, but they didn't want to fall too back and get a lesser player. So that's their theory with moving up and moving back. So yeah, for Joe Alt, if
Did
it's
he
like
say
4
that
or 5
today?
spots, yeah, he said if it they love moving up, moving back. They think maybe you might not get the player that you want, a lesser player. Lesser
Did anyone
talent.
say, but you get more players and maybe one of them is good? Did anyone bring that up?
I mean, it would have been a great thing to say. You're right. You get more players.
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
God.
and they're not necessarily. And look, think about it, Hunt. They're not necessarily hitting on the players they're moving up for.
No,
Marcus Davenport. They didn't hit on that. They lost on that, and they lost the pick the following year. So moving back, yeah, if it makes sense, if it's like all your picks, all your top 5 players are on the board at pick 14, and you're saying, you know what, we're still going to get one of our guys at 19 or 20. Let's pick up a 3rd round pick. Let's move back. Yeah, but I'm not Mickey Loomis. I'm just a sports reporter anchor who sometimes put makeup on his face.
You don't chew gum on camera either, which Mickey does. Any position or player that you might like to see the Saints go at later on in the draft, whether that's 2nd round or way back, with somebody that you may have looked at?
Yeah, in the 2nd round, I like receiver. I like Xavier Legette.
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Know him all too well. Would give them an extra weapon on that offense for Clint Kubiak. Maybe use him like Deebo Samuel. I just think he would be a good addition. Or Malachi Corley, the receiver from Western Kentucky, also speedy, shifty guy they can add to that offense. I'm thinking pass catcher. If Keon Coleman's there, that's a big body you could throw up there. I just think this team needs another pass catcher. It doesn't matter who.
What if they took 2 tackles, 1st and 2nd round?
I told you a couple weeks ago I would not be surprised if they took tackle and guard. I mean, it would not surprise. What if Patrick Paul from University of Houston sits there? You take him and you take Fuaga or Fashanu with the 1st pick. It's not out of the realm for them to do it, honestly. And don't expect them to keep all those picks in day 3.
Yeah.
They're not. Those 7 picks that I think they're gonna see them maybe couple them up with some of the picks from next year to move into 3 or 4, and they'll keep some of the 5th round picks. They got 4 of them. I think they'll use 2 of those and maybe a 4th next year to move into the 3rd this year. There's no way they're going to just sit there and just wait until the final day to make another pick after the pick 45.
Yeah,
but
you gotta make sure you don't get a lesser player in the 5th round. Don't worry about getting 4 players. You just can't back up a few spots and get a lesser player. That's great.
Yeah. That's. But yeah, defensive lineman, receiver, offensive lineman, obviously. Maybe another safety. It'd be nice to add another safety there for that team. They do need bodies. They definitely need bodies. And I know that they're not going to make all those picks. So as long as you get quality and not quantity, that, I understand his theory of we don't want to get lesser players, but I think you have to get, quality if you're going to make those picks. And this team just needs bodies, Hunt. They get younger, they need to get better somehow.
No question about it. All right, enjoy the basketball and the draft. We'll talk next week. Thanks, Sharief.
All right, Hunt, we'll be talking about the Pelicans up 3-1 in the series.
Oh, nice. A little 3-game run, Sharief picking the Pels to go on.
I don't know about that.
That's not how it works. You got to leave on the high note. That's how you got to get out of there.
It might be the other way around.
What a ruined job. Just cut him off. Just drop the call. I mean, the guy says that they're going to be up 3-1, and then he comes back and says, "Oh, well, no, never mind. It could be 3-1 the other way." That's not how we wanted it. We'll get things rolling again, close things out coming up next.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show.
ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge moments this spring. The exclusive sportsbook of ESPN has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity, getting out on the links, and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan. So sign up today, and new users can get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. In partnership with the Bears Lake Charles. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Our listeners fire up their opinions on the GymsFirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the GymsFirearms.net hotline on 1045 ESPN Baton Rouge. The Bench with Jacob Hester and T-Bob Hebert. Mornings from 7 to 10 on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Plucker's Wing Bar.
Shout out Pluckers, bringing you our Tuesday shows each and every week. Check out Breggie's Creole Crush, new Alex Bregman-inspired sauce over there at Pluckers. I have had it. It's very, very good. They got a little bit of kick to it, some great flavor as well. You can get it on, obviously, your bone-in wings. You can also get it on the boneless wings over there at Pluckers. I know a lot of people hate on boneless wings. I don't know whether you hate on them because you don't like them or because you think that they're not wings, they're just chicken tenders. Either way, they're delicious, and I love them. Call them tenders, call them boneless wings. I don't really care. I like to eat them, and I do eat them routinely at Pluckers with some Breggie's Creole Crush. Fantastic stuff. Are you offended by the term boneless wings, Beck?
No, I like them too, and I do agree with you. There are a lot of people out there that for some reason
it's like a
frowned
crusade
upon.
they've taken on where you got to have bones in your wings.
It's frowned upon to eat boneless. Go ahead.
I'm about to say I am that person. I'm against all boneless wings. It's just
Is it because of the name or because it's just way better with bones in?
I'm gonna just say it's like a decorated chicken nugget. That's how I feel.
Chicken
about
tender.
Well, it's not. Yeah, but let's say it's a
I want
chicken
wings,
tender.
not nuggets.
They're not nuggets, so they're tenders. I mean, they're way bigger than a nugget. A nugget's like
they're
this
like
big.
long tenders.
Man, give me some wings.
Hey, look,
Okay.
I like wings too.
I do too, but I also like chicken. I also like the boneless. Nothing wrong with that.
I've gone on a wild goose chase here looking for, speaking of what we call things, Olu Fashanu's pronunciation is. I feel like the best place to go is Penn State's game notes, so I've been trying to dive through their Peach Bowl, and I can't find like on the roster where it would say it. I did see some guy from the Combine who tweeted out the correct pronunciation, but I don't know where he got that from. So we'll table that for a second. I'll try to find it, but let's play Take It or Leave It.
All right, first one here. The Denver Broncos unveiled new uniforms, which will include 9 different variations. Uniforms are. Take it or leave it.
Look, I'm going to leave it. Look, we had great uniforms. The Elway Orange Crush, bright orange ones with the royal blue with the D and the Bronco coming through. Those look great. Are they loud? Yeah, they're a little bit loud, but they're classic in the sense that they were around there in the 80s and 90s. They had some great moments and memories in those uniforms. I'm all in on absolutely going back to those. I don't like what they've done with this era, and the ones that they unveiled today are worse than the ones that they've been playing in through quote-unquote like the Peyton Manning era of the Broncos. I think they're bad, and I wish they would just go back.
All right, next one here. Aaron Boone was tossed from Monday's game between the Yankees and the A's 5 pitches in because a fan yelled at the umpire, Hunter Wendelstadt, and the umpire thought it was Boone and tossed him. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to get upset, and I don't want to get upset as we end the show here. That's not how we want to end the show. But how is this allowed? Like, how have we gotten to a sports culture where people are so easily disqualified from competition because officials and umpires have their feelings hurt? Hunter Wendelstadt threw Aaron Boone out of the game yesterday. I was at home in bed watching because a fan 5 pitches in yelled at him and he threw him out. Boone was literally looking at his fingernails. And after, he disqualified the Yankees manager from making decisions because he did not like something that was said 5 pitches into the game by a fan. He went on to do an atrocious job calling the game. They've now got a grader on this that's accessible to us. Of his 47 called strikes, 15 of them were balls. 15 of his called strikes were balls. He was at a 68% clip on called strikes. So we've got a guy who, 1, can't call the strike zone, and 2, is such an unmitigated jerk that he's throwing people out on a whim because he thinks somebody heard it. And then, to triple down on this, he was asked about it after the game and said, he's in charge of the Yankees. I heard something I didn't like. He's out, even if it wasn't him. So just like, oh, it may have been somebody in the dugout. He's in charge. He's got to go. No, he doesn't have to go, Hunter. You have to go. If I was the commissioner, you would not work a game for 2 months unpaid because I can't have such egotistical maniacs calling the game incorrectly and disqualifying people who make $1 million, who are the reason people come because you're sensitive about doing your job. I cannot have that. I'm so upset by this ridiculous rash of ejections that everyone seems to be just fine with. No, I can't say that. Well, no one said anything. These umpires are so entitled because they put the shirt on that they can just do whatever they want. It's maddening to me to continue to watch this. Again, I don't want to get upset, but it is what it is. It makes me upset when stuff like that happens.
All right, last one here. Caitlin Clark is reportedly signing an 8-year, $28 million deal with Nike, which will also include a signature shoe. Clark is changing the sport as we know it. Take it or leave it.
Absolutely take it. No question about it. She's bringing a ton of interest, which is awesome. She's fantastic to watch, which is awesome. Her following, I think, is a little less in the WNBA than it would be in college basketball right now because there are just built-in college fans. There are people that are just Iowa fans because they've always been Iowa fans, and then Caitlin Clark shows up and now they're women's basketball fans. Same thing that happens with gymnastics down here. A lot of people are just, they're LSU fans. Oh, well, now we're good at gymnastics? I'll watch that. The same thing can happen in WNBA. It's just going to take some time, and I'm fired up for her in that sport. That's fantastic stuff. My wild goose chase on Olu Fashianu's last name has come up empty for this show, but we are going to have it done by tomorrow's show. I will know how to pronounce his name, either from Penn State or from him, one way or another. That is a promise to you for tomorrow's show. Missed any of today's show, catch it on demand. Matt's coming up next to drive you home on After Further Review. We're back same time, same place tomorrow. Tuesday show is brought to you by Pluckers. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.